Excellent. All right, so the Microsoft shareholders are going to get together, and there's a shareholder proposal saying that Microsoft will no longer sell products or services to any foreign government that knowingly can be used to deny basic human or labor rights. And they tell you how we're going to define that. It's outlined in the United Nations Human Rights Declaration, okay? All right, well, that sounds pretty good. What do you think?
Isn't that kind of counterproductive to profit? Like, this is the first thing that we've looked at that actually has to do with, like, ethics that are going against profit for the first time.
Well, what would Professor Milton Friedman say about this little shareholder proposal?
I don't know, you'd be kind of against it.
Okay, so Mr. Harrington, I always love these guys are always in California. John Harrington is in Napa, California. 2 words all big publicly traded companies' board of directors hate. He's a, quote, investor activist. Investor activists behind this and 3 Microsoft shareholder proposals floated in the early 2000s regarding principles for doing business with China. Yeah.
Close down like the blogs.
Close down a Chinese dissident blogs. Now, what can we, I think, fairly assume? The Chinese dissident, was he writing probably favorable things about the Chinese government on his blog? Probably not. And Microsoft closed down that blog. But Microsoft thinks in 2006 that by being nice to President Hu Jintao and shutting down a Chinese dissident, that's going to help business. Presumably that's why they did this, right? Would we all agree with that?
Yes.
And a lot of people, I think, would have made Reed's argument or Professor Friedman's argument in 2006. Well, of course, the Chinese has got, who said it here, Enrico said, a market of potentially 1 billion people, more or less, okay? And they want that market, and if they have to make the Chinese government happy in order to get that market, that's what they're going to do. Has that strategy, fast forward 6, 7 years later, has that strategy worked out so well for Microsoft?
No.
What do you say to your economics professor now, Reed?
He's talking about the middle.
He looks at the numbers, right? And what I'm trying to show to you guys is that the ethics plays a bigger role in the economics than we see on the surface. That gets back to my comment about the US elections. They talked all about economics, but you can't extrapolate ethics from economics. Because who's gained 10% of the market share since this article was written? Who has exploded what company against
Apple.
Microsoft? Say it. I mean, you have to really remember a rock, right? How many non-Apple computers are in this lecture hall?
Yeah.
One.
2. Microsoft was feeding its fear, shut the dissident down, let's keep the Chinese government. The first thing is I'll read Microsoft how it formally in a public relations statement addressed that discussion about the Chinese dissident. And putting together a committee and a policy on internet censorship. We believe the availability of our products and services has increased the ability of citizens worldwide to engage in free expression and has helped transform the economic, cultural, and political landscapes of nations throughout the world. It added that the company can control how its products are used and pointed to other initiatives meant to address human rights concerns, including, I like this, a code of conduct for its vendors. Okay, do you think its vendors read that code of conduct often? Why are you guys smiling? How about number 13? That looks pretty interesting. Jake, can you read number 13? The Board of Directors.
The Board of Directors recommends you vote against the following proposal.
A shareholder proposal. It's not coming from the board. It's a shareholder proposal. And yet the board recommends you vote which way?
Against it.
Oh, against it. The owners have proposed something? And the Board of Directors doesn't? Well, what is it they're proposing? Did you read it? I'm sorry.
Shareholder proposal, establishment of a board committee on environmental sustainability.
Sustainability. That's a hot topic. Corporations are owned mostly by other corporations. I'm going to give you a statistic or 2. This is critical for us to understand business ethics. All right, let's take a guess. In 1965, before any of us were born, including Professor McGrath, what percentage do you think of the largest 1,000 companies in the U.S., publicly traded in the U.S., okay? What USA public? Of the 1,000 largest publicly traded companies in the United States in 1965, what portion do you think of those outstanding shares in those companies were owned? What portion? By institutional investors? 16.
Wow.
This is important to understand, folks. All right, 1965, it's 16% of the outstanding shares are owned by institutional investors. All right, now bear this in mind, because we gotta understand who owns the corporation when it makes its decisions. And what's driving these decisions. All right, that's 65. Let's go fast forward to 2002. What percentage do you think in 2002 is owned?
86%.
Okay, 2002, we're at 55. We're a trend, that's 02, we're in 2013. All right, now I don't have the absolute definitive statistics. It's coming from a Yale School of Management Theory paper I have. I'll cite for you. But when we get to 2011, what do you think the number is roughly?
70.
Yeah, bingo. Everyone hear Amanda? Say it again, Amanda, loud.
70.
70%. You see a trend, folks? Do you see a trend? Who owns the big corporations? Mutual, other big corporations. So when we look at taking a shareholder proposal on environmental sustainability, it was probably, and it was probably created by an individual, one of these people like an investor activist. The majority of the other shareholders voting on this proposal are whom? Yes, say it great.
Other big companies.
Other big company. Or Meg is head of investments for the XYZ hedge fund company. How many shares do you think they have of Microsoft?
A lot more.
A lot more. As head of investments, what is it her job to do? Jake, what is it her job to do if she does her job successfully?
To decide where to invest.
And to decide where to invest. And in looking to do that, what is she going to be looking at? Making a profit, presumably, yeah?
Correct.
And if Meg doesn't make a profit, what happens?
She'll probably be fired.
She'll be fired. She'll be fired. If Microsoft even actually put together this board committee on sustainability, what would be the consequence to me as a shareholder of Microsoft? The worst thing that will happen to me.
Maybe nothing.
Maybe nothing. Correct. Or the worst thing would be Microsoft shares go down in price from what I paid for it. Is
For
that
the
good?
time being.
For the time being, even better. Okay? But if Meg doesn't think shorter term, that this company has to make money as long as I'm employed here as head of investments. Is she going to think longer term for Microsoft or the environment when she looks at a proposal like this?
No,
And say,
she's
you know,
gonna
the
think she
XYZ
needs to
hedge
show-
fund company, we really think this is a hot topic and we want all of our investments to really get into sustainability. I'm going to tell Microsoft they have to start getting on this. Do you think that happens a lot? Carrie's shaking her head.
No.
Henry, what do you think?
Yeah,
Yeah, what?
if she wants to.
That she wants to do sustainability?
Yeah.
And what constraints might she have, or might not?
That depends on how much money they spend on it, and whether it affects their bottom line.
Correct. Say it louder.
Whether it affects their bottom line, how much money they spend on it.
Whether or not it affects the hedge fund's bottom line. Okay, so she's always got to live with that constraint, correct? Because if the hedge fund's investments start losing money, back to Jake's point, what happens to Meg and her job?
Bye.
That's it. Then she can't pay the mortgage and her husband leaves her.